The Millionaire and the Homeless Black Man, a story of hope and change. Richard Allen's name once meant power, fortune, and invincibility. Now, it was whispered with curiosity and suspicion across New York City. The man who ruled skyscrapers and boardrooms was trapped behind the thick glass of his luxury penthouse. His kingdom turned prison. Since the crash, his body ached like fire, trapped in ice. Every scar, a painful reminder. But it wasn't just the wounds on his skin that tore him apart. It was the loneliness clawing at his mind. Night after night, the city breathed wild beneath him, alive and merciless, while he sat in silence, swallowed by his own shadow. Rumors swirled fast. The richest man in Manhattan hires a homeless woman? Downtown voices hissed. What's he hoping to find in her? Some called Naomi a mystery in ragged clothes, a ghost drifting between neon lights and darkness. Others said she was a woman with a past thick with secrets, shattered dreams hidden beneath. When Richard found her, shivering near a subway grate, something inside him cracked open. Desperation pulled him to that moment, a silent plea for company, for meaning beyond the cold luxury. In his penthouse, the world shifted. The towering glass walls absorbed Naomi's rough sketches. Shadows danced on the expensive floors. Her art wasn't just paint on canvas. It was rage, hope, and pain breathed onto paper. Slowly, Richard's fractured soul felt a spark. Something raw, alive. Her drawings came alive with city chaos, with faces forgotten and streets that screamed danger and beauty all at once. But there was more. Underneath Naomi's quiet smiles lurked stories tangled with his own. Strange calls haunted the edges of his mind. Whispers of corruption, voices from shadows he thought buried with the crash. Men in dark suits lingered too long in the background, eyes sharp and cold. Naomi's past was no accident. It twisted with the very night that shattered Richard's world. Together, every step uncovered dangerous truths. Richard's chest tightened when memories surged, flashes of recklessness, betrayal, and those last terrifying seconds before the crash. Hands trembling, he realized Naomi held a key he never expected. Her past linked with hidden enemies, hungry to keep silence. The city pulsed beneath them, a sprawling beast watching their every move. Fear sat heavy like thunder in the air. Richard stared out his window, the neon streets glowing like distant fires, and knew one thing. The ghosts from his old life were far from dead. And now, as their worlds collided, the question gnawed at him. Would he have the strength to protect Naomi when the darkness came for them both? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Richard stared out at the sea of lights, the pulsating heartbeat of the city throbbing beneath him. A storm of thoughts raged in his mind, but amid the chaos, there was an unfamiliar warmth at his side. Naomi, lively and radiant, her rough sketches scattered around them. Richard, she said softly, her voice a caress in the heavy air. It's beautiful, isn't it? All these stories waiting to be told? Caught in the moment, when suddenly a crash shattered the calm. The penthouse shuddered, as if the building itself winced in fear. Did you hear that? Naomi's eyes widened, darting toward the source of the sound. A distant echo of whispers slithered through the room, clinging to the walls like ghosts. Before he could respond, the door burst open, and two men stormed into the room. Dark suits, ominous shadows, their eyes glinted dangerously in the dim light. "Mr. Allen," one of them barked, voice low and dangerous. "We have business to discuss." Richard's heart raced. "What do you want?" he managed to say, the tightness in his chest constricting. The second man stepped forward, a smug smile creeping across his face. "You've been digging where you shouldn't, Richard, and now it's time to pay for your curiosity." The air thickened with tension, each breath heavier than the last. Naomi tensed beside him. "We won't let you manipulate us," she shot back, fierce defiance glowing in her eyes. Just then, a loud thud rang out from the balcony, sending Richard's gaze flying over to the windows. A dark figure clung to the edge of the ledge, fearlessly peering into their haven. It was a woman, her hair wild, eyes frantic. "Help me, please!" she screamed, voice breaking. The men exchanged glances, annoyance crackling in the air. "That's not our problem," the first man spat, but Richard felt something uncoil inside him. "Wait!" he shouted, but before he could utter another word, a flash of vivid color swirled through the apartment, cutting through the curtains of shadows like a knife. Naomi gasped. The woman leaped onto the balcony, frantically clawing her way in, only to collapse at Richard's feet, panting for breath. "They know everything," she gasped between heaves. "About you, about her, about the crash." Richard's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" he demanded. "Naomi," she rasped, drenching the name in urgency. "They're coming for her. They want to silence you both." Panic gripped him. Naomi's expression shifted sharply, confusion and fear knitting her brow. "What are you talking about?" The woman's eyes darted around the room, catching glimpses of the men pressing forward, their presence darkening the space. "Your art, Naomi. It holds the secrets they've buried deep. The truth about the crash, it's all connected." Richard felt the floor beneath him wobble. The past he thought he understood, twisted in a way he couldn't comprehend. "What truth?" he asked, voice trembling, desperate for clarity. In that moment, everything fell silent. Shock, anxiety, and intrigue hung thick in the air. Just as the first man lifted his hand to grab Naomi, a loud crash echoed behind them, glass shattering, chaos erupting. Time seemed to freeze. Richard's breath quickened, heartbeats thundered in his ears. All at once, the pieces fell into place, mirroring the shattered glass around them. And in that fleeting moment of confusion, he realized nothing was as it seemed. Betrayals echoed in whispers, a web they were entangled in, each thread pulling tighter. "Richard," Naomi's voice sliced through the silence, dripping with dread. "Do you trust me?" As the storm loomed closer, Richard's throat tightened. The shadows around them shifted, ready to unleash their chaos. Would he take a leap into the unknown, or would the ghosts of his past swallow them whole? Richard barely registered the chaos. His heart thudded against his ribs. "Do you trust me?" Naomi's voice echoed in his mind, heavy with urgency. Every instinct screamed to protect her. But the shadows were pressing in. The men moved forward, intent on reclaiming control. "Wait!" Richard called out, hope threading through his panic. The woman who crashed into their lives was gasping on the floor, trembling like a leaf in a storm. She was the wild card he never saw coming. "Naomi, we need to go!" he shouted, grasping her arm, but the moment was stolen from them. The first man spoke again, voice cold and sharp. "You think you can just run? The game's already in motion." Just as Richard moved to pull Naomi away, a loud bang erupted from outside. A shot! Glass sprayed like confetti. Richard ducked instinctively, pulling Naomi down with him, their bodies crashing to the polished floor. His mind raced. Who was outside? What were they getting into? "Get up!" the second man barked, glaring toward the broken window. "If you think this is a game?" But as they scrambled to regain footing, something unexpected happened. The woman on the ground suddenly leaped up, a fierce resolve igniting in her eyes. "You don't understand," she shouted, voice strong against the storm. "You're in grave danger. All of you. I'm not just some frantic stranger. I'm the key." Richard blinked, confusion knocking against his chest. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" "The money, Richard." "The crash, Naomi's art. It's all connected. Your empire is a facade built on lies and blood. It's not just me they're hunting, it's you. If I don't unravel it, they'll bury you both." Naomi gasped, her face a mix of disbelief and fear. "What?" she whispered, eyes wide, searching for answers in the chaos. Before the woman could respond, a sudden loud noise reverberated. More shots aimed at the penthouse. Richard felt icy fear crawl down his spine. "Get back!" he urged Naomi, yanking her further away. Yet in that heartbeat of panic, the truth shattered like the glass around them. He turned, grabbing the woman's shoulders. "Why are you here? Who are you? Are you saying we're targets?" But then, the woman drew back, her own expression shifting, seemingly aware of an invisible impact in the air. Visibly shaken, she muttered, "I didn't want you to find out this way." Her face twisted in anguish. Just then, the first man, recovering himself, threw a dark curveball. "Oh, but you didn't tell them, did you? The truth behind your art, Naomi, or how you came to be here." Richard stepped back, confusion freezing him in place. "What do you mean?" "Naomi isn't who you think she is." The man grinned, a predator's smile stretching across his face, clenching something in his fist. "The truth is, she's been playing both sides all along." Naomi inhaled sharply, every ounce of color draining from her face. "No, that's not true!" she cried, panic rising. But the room swirled with tension, every word heavy with accusation. "You see, Richard," the man sneered, "the crash wasn't an accident. And the art she creates? It's not just a expression. It's a signal, a map to the secrets buried deep. It lies in your past, tied to everything you thought you escaped." The sudden weight of the revelation dropped. Richard's breath caught. All thoughts about protecting Naomi melted into confusion and fear. He turned to her, eyes wide, searching, pleading. "Naomi, please, is it true? What's he saying?" Her lips trembled, the truth hanging like a noose. I didn't want you to find out this way." Before she could finish, the room grew deathly silent, as if time itself held its breath. Richard felt a rift shift beneath them. Everything he thought solid, now shaken. Trust splintered like shattered glass. And just as despair crept in, an explosive knock rattled the door, threatening to tear them apart. In that moment, all that had been built on promises and shared breaths hung precariously on the edge. And the question surged. Could he still trust the heart that had become a lifeline? Or was it all merely another part of the twisted game? The door rattled violently, and Richard's heart raced. Moments stretched like eternity as he glanced at Naomi, confusion etched across her face. "What do we do?" Her voice quivered. The air around them crackled with tension, every second dragging them deeper into uncertainty. Then came another ban. "We know you're in there." The voice was menacing, laced with authority. Richard felt his chest tighten. They were running out of time. "Stay behind me," he instructed Naomi, adrenaline surging through him. He turned to the woman who had surprised them, still gasping on the floor. "You two, get ready to move." The chaos swirled around them. "Richard," the woman breathed, urgency rising in her voice. "You need to listen. There are people who want to erase everything. You have to trust me." He wanted to scream, to demand clarity, but there wasn't time. The pounding continued, each strike like a drumbeat of fate. Then it happened. A blinding flash from outside the window. A loud crack reverberating against the walls. Richard could barely react before the joyful colors of daytime shattered into a storm of chaos. His heart dropped as a fireball exploded outside, sending a shockwave crashing into the penthouse. Glass flew everywhere, shards like rain. Richard instinctively shielded Naomi, throwing his body over hers. The rush of wind pulled them apart as blinding light filled the room. When it cleared, Richard's body trembled. Sirens wailed outside, a cacophony of chaos erupting in the distance. The first man lay on the ground, unmoving, shadowed by the dazzle of smoke and fire. The second man stumbled back, shock rippling through him. "Run!" Richard shouted, adrenaline pumping. But as they tried to bolt for the door, the woman's hand shot out, grabbing Richard's wrist. "Wait, there's something you don't know." His pulse quickened again, confusion storming inside him. "What is it?" But before she could answer, the second man whipped around, eyes filled with panic. "It's too late," he yelled, pointing wildly out the window. "They're coming!" Richard turned, heart sinking as he caught sight of a group of figures advancing toward the building. Dressed in tactical gear, they were armed and determined, moving with mechanical precision. Suddenly, the air thickened with tension once more. With a hiss of fear escaping his lips, he felt a shift in the atmosphere as the woman leaned closer, urgency dripping from her tone. "You don't understand. I'm not just a stranger. I'm part of this. I'm your sister." The words slammed into him like a punch. "What?" Richard's voice rang out, disbelief flooding his veins. "Your father, he was involved in everything. The crash, the money, all of it. I was meant to be there, but I was hidden away. I'm the last piece to the puzzle you're desperate to solve." Every shred of certainty in Richard's world dissolved. His knees felt weak as he stared at her, the truth banging against his skull like a drum. "No, that can't be. You're lying." But her eyes held a mixture of fear and truth. The blaring sirens shrieked louder. "I have proof! They want us both dead for what we know." The second man turned, his face paling in the smoke-filled room. "This isn't about you anymore, Richard. You're just a pawn." Pawns. The word echoed painfully. As panic seized him, Richard finally understood that their lives hung by a thread, each twist leading to darker revelations. Hope flickered beneath the weight of his despair, but something deeper shifted within him, a rage awakening. With urgency pressing in, Richard realized the only way out was through. "We don't have time for this. Get moving!" He pushed through the door they were blocking, ready to face the storm unfolding outside. His thoughts jumbled, but one question throbbed in his mind. Who truly held the puppet strings? Richard charged through the doorway, adrenaline coursing through him. He ripped away the feelings of betrayal and confusion, focusing entirely on survival. The hallway beyond buzzed with chaos. He glanced back, Naomi's panicked eyes wide, the woman's face pale with urgency. "No time for explanations. We need to move," he urged, pulling them into the fray. But just as they stepped into the corridor, a ferocious explosion rocked the floor beneath them. A deafening roar echoed, tearing through the air like a beast unleashed. Richard stumbled, instinctively shielding Naomi, but the shockwave pitched them sideways. "Get down!" the woman yelled, her voice piercing the chaos. They huddled together, desperate, hearts hammering in sync. The world blurred around them. Smoke billowed, and the scent of burning metal filled the air. "Is everyone okay?" Richard shouted, breathless with fear, scrambling to ensure the two women beside him were unharmed. "Not for long! They'll be here!" the woman warned, looking frantic. He barely took in her words when a crunching sound reverberated through the hallway. No, it wasn't just sounds. It was footsteps, heavy and determined. They were drawing closer. "Get to the stairs!" Richard urged, fear morphing his voice into sharp command. He pushed forward, but suddenly the woman gripped his arm. "Wait, you have to know the truth first." Richard twisted to face her. "What truth? Right now, we need to escape." "No!" Her eyes glistened like shards of glass. "This is bigger than all of us. If we don't confront it now." A sudden explosion of glass erupted from behind them, the hallway blinding in burst. A figure surged through the smoke, a man, eyes wild and fierce. He pointed directly at Naomi. "You think you can escape?" Before Richard could react, the woman lunged forward, blocking the man's path. "No, not her. It's not her you want." Richard's heart dropped. "What are you saying? You're putting yourself in danger." But the man didn't flinch. "It's too late for heroes. You have no idea what you're meddling with." He moved toward the woman, a weapon glinting in his hand. In a split second, time slowed. Richard felt his chest tighten as he saw the man's hand pull back and the chaos unfurl before him. "No!" came Naomi's voice, but it was swallowed by the roar of confrontation. The woman didn't hesitate. She threw herself into the path of the advancing danger, the air exploding around them as gunfire erupted like thunder. Richard's breath hitched, shock freezing him in place. He could barely move, his mind racing. Was she mad? But then, as the dust cleared, everything shifted. The woman stood there, unharmed. The intensity of the moment shifted, her expression morphing into a twisted grin Richard only then recognized. It cut through the fog of confusion like a knife. "Surprised to see me?" she said, her voice dripping with a mocking tone. "Did you really think I'd be here to save you? Oh, Richard, you're not as clever as you think." Richard's heart dropped. "What are you talking about?" "Nice try, but I'm not your sister," she laughed, the sound cold and tearing. "I'm here to make sure you're taken care of. The two of you have stirred the pot way too much, and it's time for things to return to normal." Naomi stood frozen in shock, her breath catching. You lied to us?" Richard's mind whirled. Who was she? Was this all an act? Had everything been a grand deception? Betrayal never felt so good, the woman sneered, stepping back into the shadows, revealing her true self as the chaos unfolded. "And by the way, I'm the one pulling the strings here. Everything. Your past, your crash, your art. It's all part of the plan. You both are just pieces in a much larger game." Richard's chest tightened painfully. The walls began to close in. Horror enveloped. He looked at Naomi, who was pale and trembling, yet angry, rage igniting in her eyes. "I won't let you take him," she declared, her voice steadying, fueled by a raw force. "Too late," the woman's voice echoed back, chilling calm weaving through the tension. The air grew thick with realization, each heartbeat hammering against the truth crashing down around them. Everything they thought they knew was a lie. And as shadows of the past loomed around them, Richard couldn't decide if it was hope or despair that gripped his heart. "Get them!" the woman commanded, her smile sinister, as other figures emerged from the smoke, all clad in dark gear, closing in fast. And in that moment, Richard was faced not just with a fight for survival, but with the shattered remnants of trust and truth. Would they pull together, or would betrayal tear them apart for good? Richard felt the weight of betrayal crushing him. The woman, her face twisting in wicked glee, wasn't just a stranger. She was a calculated threat. He glanced at Naomi, her eyes searching his for answers. "What do we do?" she whispered, barely managing to keep her voice steady. "Run!" he yelled, but the men in tactical gear closed in around them, looming shadows ready to strike. The air thickened with dread, knocking the breath from his lungs. "Stop!" the woman commanded, laughter spilling from her lips like poison. "There's no escape for either of you. You think you can just walk away from this? I control everything." The hallway around them pulsed with tension. Richard felt his heart pounding, but then something flickered behind the woman. A flash of blue light, echoing faintly like a digital heartbeat. Just then, the door frame exploded inward, splinters flying. The tactical team rushed in, guns raised, and a figure stepped forward. Richard's eyes widened in disbelief. Eli? It was his former best friend, the one who disappeared when everything fell apart, when Richard lost his empire. The boy who once shared dreams of success was back, but now he was unrecognizable. "Surprise," Eli said, his tone laced with a cold detachment. "Thought you could unravel the truth without me knowing?" The woman sneered, glancing at Eli. "You brought him back? You're playing a dangerous game. Shut up!" Eli snapped, and Richard could see a fracture in the icy bravado. "You're not the only one who plays in the shadows." Just like that, the temperature of the room shifted. Tension twisted tighter. Betrayal was brewing on every side. Now, Richard faced not one, but two enemies. "Believe me, I never meant to drag you into this," Eli continued, but it felt hollow. "Why are you here?" Richard demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "What do you want from us?" Naomi clutched Richard's arm, her breath warm against his skin. "We need to go, Richard. We have to get away from here." But before they could bolt, Eli pulled something from his pocket, a small black device. Richard's instincts screamed, and he instinctively moved to shield Naomi. But then, Eli pressed a button. A bright flash exploded in the room, and everything changed. Richard's vision swirled like a kaleidoscope of color, and then blackness. He felt himself being yanked away, lost in sudden silence. "Wake up!" Eli's voice surged through the void, harsh and insistent, pulling Richard from the shadows. Richard gasped, jerked back into reality, but everything had changed. They weren't in the penthouse anymore. They were in a dimly lit concrete room filled with old monitors, wires crisscrossing like vines. Panic gripped him. Confusion clouded the air. "What happened?" Richard shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Naomi stood beside him, eyes scanning the room, filled with uncertainty. "Eli, what is this place?" Eli's demeanor shifted, a flicker of fear breaking through his steely facade. "This is where it all ends," he said, voice almost a whisper. "This is where you find out everything." Richard's heart raced. "What do you mean?" Then the monitors flickered to life, showcasing images of chaos Richard could hardly fathom. Protests, corruption, whispers of deals made in shadows. "You thought the crash was just an accident?" Eli's voice turned ragged, every word hitting Richard like a punch. "Your father? He wasn't just a businessman. This was all planned. They destroyed lives to build an empire. And you were supposed to be part of it." Richard felt the floor drop from under him, the reality ripping apart the legacy he thought was his. "No, that can't be. I found Naomi. This is different." As he looked to Naomi, something shifted in him. Her expression was serious, too serious. Did she know? Was there a side to her he hadn't seen? "Richard," she began, but the tension in her voice cut short as voices grew louder from the doorway. Shadows spilling in. "We need to leave, now," Eli urged, but Richard was frozen, the new truth crashing over him like a tidal wave. Everything he thought he knew was a lie. Every connection woven in darkness. The room filled with armed men stepping closer. "Time's up," one of them said, and Richard felt dread pool in his stomach. In those few seconds, everything he loved, everything he trusted, teetered on the brink of collapse. The lines drawn in the sand had blurred completely. And in that moment, Richard realized the stakes were higher than he ever imagined. "Get your hands off her!" he cried, his heart pounding for Naomi, for the truth he was only beginning to unveil. But as the darkness engulfed him again, That single thought gnawed at him. What else don't I know? Richard felt the breath hitch in his throat as the armed men stepped closer. Panic wove through his veins, electrifying every nerve. Naomi clutched his arm tighter, her fear palpable. The dark room seemed to close in on them, breaths shallow and tense. "Who are you?" Richard demanded again, trying to keep his voice steady. But Eli's expression shifted, something flickering behind his eyes. "This place is a trap," Eli muttered, glancing nervously around. "You all don't get it. We're not the only ones who've been looking for answers." Then the door burst open once more, and a figure materialized through the haze of smoke. It wasn't just any figure. "Richard!" She stepped forward, wild hair flying, eyes blazing like fire. It was Sarah, Richard's mother, the woman he had lost years ago in the chaos surrounding the crash. The sight struck him like a thunderbolt. "Mom?" His voice shook. He couldn't breathe, couldn't process the whirlwind swirling inside him. How was she alive? How could she be here? Before you say anything, she shot a look at the armed men. "I need to explain. You have to trust me." Trust? Richard felt a turmoil of emotions. Joy, confusion, anger. "You left. You vanished." "I had to," she replied, voice softening. "They were after us, Richard. They're still after us." The men hesitated, eyes darting between Richard and Sarah, uncertainty creeping into their stony expressions. Richard held onto Naomi's hand, feeling the pulse of fear coursing through both of them. Everything he knew was crumbling, yet here was a flicker of the familiar. "Mom, what happened?" Richard's voice trembled. "Your father, he had enemies. I thought we were safe, but they never stopped chasing us," she said, the words heavy with regret. "I had to protect you." "But how did you survive?" Richard cried out, disbelief crashing against the walls of his heart. Just then, another voice broke in, deep and gravelly. "She didn't survive, Richard." It was the woman, the supposed sister, now laughing, the sound harsh and mocking. "She's a ghost. You've been manipulated the whole time. Feminine charms and secrets don't make sense, do they? I taught her how to hide." Richard felt a chill creep down his spine. "What are you saying?" "Your mother's not your mother," the woman sneered. The bedrock beneath Richard's feet crumbled. The memories, the love, the loss, it was all shaking free. "What do you mean?" "No, stop!" Naomi shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. "This isn't about her." But the woman simply grinned, an unsettling smile. "Everything is connected. This whole time, you've been a pawn in a game much bigger than you think. And now," she waved a hand dramatically, "you're out of moves." Richard's heart raced. "Mom?" He turned to Sarah, searching for clarity in the storm. But desperation flickered in Sarah's eyes, and he realized she was searching too. "No!" Richard's roar echoed in the dim room. "This can't be true." Just then, there was a loud bang as the nearest monitor exploded. Sparks flew, lighting the darkness just long enough for him to see a figure dart toward them, a man with familiar features cloaked in shadows. Short and swift, he made his way through the chaos, eyes locking on to Richard. The word escaped Richard's lips without him even knowing it. But before he could gather his smashed thoughts, a deafening crash ripped through the air, like a tidal wave. something massive barreling down from above. Dust fell like snowflakes, choking light and hope. Then the ceiling erupted, collapsing as everyone screamed, and Richard's world twisted into chaos again. But amidst the horror, a glimmer sparked. A truth he didn't know yet flickered in his mind. Everything changed in that split second. Where will they go now? What ties will snap? What memories will be lost or found? It felt like the very earth was shifting beneath him, threatening to swallow everything whole. The room trembled again. Dust and debris fell from above like confetti at a funeral. Richard blinked, still in disbelief. His eyes darted from his mother to this woman masquerading as his sister, to Naomi, her expression shifting from fear to a hardened resolve. "Mom, what are you saying?" Richard shouted, desperation clawing at him. But then there was a sound, a strange hum cutting through the chaos. The monitors flickered again, revealing a new image of a burning building, flames licking at the sky. The words, "Controlled demolition," flashed on the screen. Richard's heart skipped. "What does that mean?" "Richard!" Eli's voice pierced through. "Look out!" Suddenly, the wall exploded in a shower of concrete and splinters. A figure stormed in, cloaked in darkness, eyes cold like ice. Richard's breath stuck in his throat as the newcomer stepped forward, gun drawn and aimed directly at him. "Step away from her," the figure shouted. Richard instinctively moved to shield his mother, but she stepped forward, trembling but defiant. "You don't understand. I'm trying to help him." "No more lies," the figure growled, and with a flash, the gun went off. The crack of the shot echoed painfully, and Richard's heart dropped as he watched his mother jerk backward, a splatter of crimson blooming across her shirt. "Mom!" He lunged toward her, but Naomi caught his arm. "Stop!" Time froze. Horror etched into their faces. Richard's heart raced, the world swirling. He couldn't process the sight. His mother collapsing, gasping for breath. Why would you?" Sarah choked, blood spilling from her lips. The figure laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. "You really think she's here to protect you? She was always a pawn, just like you." Richard's mind reeled. "No, this can't be happening." But as he looked into the eyes of the figure, recognition hit him like a sack of bricks. "You! It can't be you!" The figure lowered the gun, face lighting up with a twisted grin. "Oh, it's me, Richard, your father's most trusted ally." A wave of nausea washed over him. "You? But you were supposed to be dead. You were killed in the crash. And yet here I am, alive and well. You never bothered to dig deep enough, did you?" A strange realization began to settle. Dark shadows creeping forward. Richard's eyes flicked to the monitors again, and the images changed. Faces scrolled rapidly, people associated with his past, allies turned enemies. "No," Richard whispered. Disbelief swelling like a thick tide. But it wasn't just disbelief. It was anger, a fiery rage igniting within him. "What did you do?" "Everything for your father, Richard. For a world that only sees power. I'm here to finish what we started, and with your mother out of the way." His heart pounded as despair wrapped around him like chains. "You monster!" As if in response, the figure threw back their head and laughed. but the sound twisted into something different, something sinister. The kind of laugh that echoed secrets long buried. Then, with a flick of the wrist, the figure triggered another device. The monitors flashed once more, showing an eerily familiar flicker. Pictures of Richard as a child, moments of innocence stolen, carefully planned. You were never meant to stray from the path. Your life was orchestrated from the beginning. Oh, everything turned to chaos. Richard felt as if the ground beneath him was collapsing. Naomi grabbed his hand, grounding him, but he could hardly focus on her. Anger surged like fire, threatening to burn him alive. "Get back!" he yelled, the terrifying mix of fear and fury coursing through his veins. But just as he shouted, the walls around them began to tremble again. "Everything I did was meant to protect you," Sarah croaked from the floor, blood pooling beneath her. "I had to." But it was too late for explanations. The building around them began to shift, cracks spiderwebbing along the walls. Danger loomed like a dark storm pressing in. Richard thought of everything, the lies, the secrets, the art that held the keys to all his questions. "Move!" Eli shouted, urgency thrumming in his voice. But in that moment, a thunderous blast erupted, shaking the very foundation. Everything changed. The room exploded into chaos, the sound deafening, piercing. Richard and Naomi stumbled back, the darkness swallowing them whole as the ceiling caved in. Dust enveloped them, and as everything fell apart, unknown truths loomed larger than ever. And just when Richard thought it couldn't get worse, he remembered. Was his father really dead? Or had he set them all up to fall? With a lump in his throat and fear tightening around him like a noose, he realized one shocking truth. They might not just be fighting against the wrong enemy. They could be playing right into his hands. Would they survive to uncover the real mastermind behind this twisted game? The room caved in around them. Dust filled the air, heavy and choking. Richard felt his chest tighten as the severity of the moment crashed over him. He couldn't take it. His mother lying there, her wounds soaking into the ground. Naomi's grip on his hand was a lifeline, grounding him amidst a spiraling chaos. "Richard, look out!" Eli shouted, his voice strained. Richard barely turned before the figure fired again, another deafening shot. Time slowed as gunfire rang out. Richard dove, pulling Naomi to the side, but instead of chaos, silence enveloped them. The echo of the gunshot vanished, and all at once the room shadowed in an unearthly stillness. And through the dust, a blinding light erupted behind the figure. Richard squinted, trying to fight through the haze. The glow grew more intense until it erupted into a full blaze. He gasped, heart racing. Was this the end? Then he heard it, a voice, familiar yet distant. "Richard, get out of the way!" In a blink, the figure was knocked off balance, the gun flying from their hands and clattering out of reach. Richard's eyes widened as the light pulsed, illuminating everything. Within the brilliance, he saw not just his mother and Naomi, but faces he thought he'd never see again. Friends lost to the darkness, and even his father. The brightness receded. And there stood Samuel, his father. But Samuel was not just alive. His face held a strength, a commanding presence Richard had only known from old stories. Confusion swept through Richard like a storm tearing at his foundations. Dad? But How? Richard's voice trembled. Later, Samuel said, his gaze fierce, full of urgency. We have bigger problems right now. The woman looked at Samuel with fear, glancing to Richard as if assessing her next move. This is impossible. You were dead. Samuel didn't answer, instead moving toward Richard. We're not safe yet. We need to leave. Richard could scarcely breathe. He wanted to scream, to demand answers. But Mom, she's hurt. She'll be okay, I promise, Samuel assured him. But Richard could hear the tension in his father's voice. Then, everything shifted again. The room shook violently, sending chunks of debris crashing around them. The armed men regained their footing, eyes wild. More shots rang out, but they connected with the man who had masqueraded as Richard's sister, her body crumpling to the floor. No, Richard shouted, instinct overriding reason. The panic clawed at him as darkness enveloped the woman's figure. Stay back, one of the men shouted, leveling a gun at Samuel. Richard's heart felt like it would explode. No, don't harm him! Then, in the midst of palpable fear, Samuel turned. You're all pawns. You're too close to the fire. He raised his hands, a strange energy pulsing around him, and with a sweep of his arm, the men found themselves pinned back against the wall, immobilized. I don't believe this, Richard gasped, confusion deepening as if someone had turned reality on its head. But just as quickly as it began, the immobilizing energy faltered. Richard's father staggered, a pained expression crossing his face. The connection waned, and the men rushed forward, yelling. Samuel tumbled backward, losing strength. No! Richard called out, stepping between Samuel and the men. But just as he did, the floor beneath them began to crack open, swallowing the space whole. Light danced dangerously. Richard felt a wild, frantic energy pulse inside him, igniting a surge of fear and hope, and revelations whispered through the chaos like forgotten memories. Then came the shocking realization. He wasn't the only one with power. Naomi stepped forward, face steely, whispers of unseen forces wrapping around her. This isn't over, she declared, confidence radiating from her. Richard blinked, realizing the depths of her strength. But before he could process this shift, a darkness seeped into the room, swirling around Samuel, around Naomi. It pulled them toward an unknown, sudden, and intense, like gravity had shifted. Suddenly, Richard's mind raced with questions. What had he just witnessed? Who was truly on his side? What hidden power lay dormant? As the shadows danced menacingly closer, he felt, with every ounce of his being, that nothing would ever be the same. With a deep breath, he knew they were teetering on the brink of something devastating, and the real battle was just beginning. The chaos settled into an uneasy silence. Richard's heart raced, thunder pounding in his ears. He looked at Samuel, who was fighting to regain his strength, and at Naomi, her expression shifting from fear to determination. But the room still trembled, cracks spiderwebbing around the walls, as the reality of the situation hit them like a tidal wave. "Get her out! Now!" Richard yelled, urgency clenching his throat. Sarah lay on the ground, blood pooling around her. He had to make a choice: stay and find answers, or save the ones he loved. Naomi stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "I can hold them back," she declared, energy crackling around her like electricity. Richard's breath caught. "Naomi, no!" He rushed to her side, but she shook her head, fierce resolve in her gaze. "I can help. Just go!" Her voice cracked, but determination shone through the fear. The room shook again, shadows closing in. Richard's thoughts raced. The man who had seemed unstoppable was now backed against a wall, but the danger was still real. The moment spun out of control. Richard ripped his gaze from Naomi and looked at his father. "Samuel, you have to help her!" But Samuel struggled to stay grounded. "I can't. Not long enough. Find the exit." Time moved in slow motion. Richard felt the gravity of his past pulling him down, but also the spark of hope that surged from Naomi's bravery. "I won't leave you," he shouted, stepping closer to Naomi, who glowed with determination. "Go, now!" she urged again, voice laced with strength. The shadows pulsated, waiting like predators, closing in on them. Tension hummed through the air. Something inside Richard snapped. "We go together!" He pulled Naomi close, feeling the warmth of her strength. In that moment, something shifted. The shadows flickered, the air thick with tension. "Trust me," he murmured. Richard squeezed Naomi's hand tighter. Together, they stepped into the chaos, ready to confront the darkness head-on. They rushed through the wreckage, dodging crumbling walls and debris. The others followed closely, adrenaline fueling their flight. As they burst through a door, they found themselves on a fire escape overlooking the city. It was a different world. The skyline vast and alive with sirens and lights. But they couldn't linger. "Don't stop!" Richard urged, leading the way down the metal stairs. They hit the ground running, the night air fresh and filled with the promise of freedom. But sounds of pursuit echoed behind them. "Keep going!" Sarah's voice was faint but strong. She pressed forward despite the pain. Behind them, the figures of the armed men twisted through the door. Shadows against the stark glow of the streetlights. They pushed on, adrenaline surging. Richard's heart hammered as they turned corners, looking for an escape. But doubt crept in. Had they truly left danger behind? Suddenly, they reached a secluded alley. They halted, gasping for breath, fear cloaked thick in the air. Richard's mind whirled with questions. Will we be safe? Naomi's eyes sparkled. We will fight this together. You'll see, he nodded, drawing strength from her words, but dread still lingered. In that moment, Samuel stood beside them, looking weary but resolute. I'll explain everything once we're out of this mess, but first, we need a plan. Just as urgency settled in their hearts, the growling engines of approaching vehicles thundered in the distance. They exchanged glances. It wasn't over. Let them come, Richard spat, his jaw tight with defiance. They've underestimated us for too long. But before they could strategize, a flicker of movement caught Richard's eye. A shadow emerged from... Ooh! He froze as the figure stepped into the light, revealing another truth he hadn't anticipated. As the night rippled with uncertainty, moments felt elongated. But in the heart of danger, they all stood together, a fierce alliance against the approaching storm. what awaited them was still a mystery. The past loomed like a specter, binding their fates. And just like that, the echo of the unresolved hung heavily over them. If you want to hear what comes next in this gripping saga, you must subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep these amazing stories coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild finale. And don't wait 1 second longer to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. Only true fans understand the importance of keeping our story alive together.